The Honourable Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, is here to speak on their agreement with the several major public sector trade unions, including a majority of the unions in the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, on the new restructured public sector compensation system. Minister, morning, how are you?
Morning.
Morning, God. Morning, Delia. Thank you for having me.
Right. Now, this journey started back in 2018.
Yes.
And last week, I think between Tuesday and Thursday of last week, we got the signatures on paper, the agreements and so on. Just describe that process and why did it take 4 years for us to finally get to this point?
Yes, God, it's a big moment and it's a big achievement for Jamaica and for public sector unions and for the government. Public sector compensation for a long time has been inequitous, has been complicated, and has been unsustainable. We just couldn't go forward with a compensation system that had over 325 different pay scales, 185 different allowances. It just got to a point where it was unsustainable. Unions recognized that a long time ago. The government recognized that, but we needed the time to completely restructure compensation. We have 110,000 people. 100,000 people in central government who work for, who are on the compensation system, and we had to design something entirely new that was consistent with a single job evaluation tool and that provided equity horizontally across the public sector. That took time. And to the credit of the unions, if they didn't agree to that 4-year wage deal that we did, that ended in we wouldn't have had the time or space to do this. So every time I speak about this historic development, I pay tribute to public sector unions who agreed with the government in a historic, unprecedented 4-year wage deal that gave us the time to do the analysis that got us where we got last week.
You made mention of it being sustainable.
Yes.
Which means we won't have to look back at this for a long time to come, or if there are adjustments to be made, it shouldn't be too difficult. What are some of the highlights which would make it so sustainable?
The structure of compensation. The first thing is we're using a single job evaluation tool throughout the public sector. What occurred previous to this is that there were multiple job evaluation tools. So you would be working at Ministry X or at Agency Y, and your job would be very similar to somebody else at Ministry A or Agency B, yet your compensation would be very different. So a single job evaluation tool to evaluate all jobs. We're using a single spine throughout the public sector of 16 points that everybody fits onto, as opposed to 325 different grades. So the features of it is that it's transparent, it's much easier to understand. People who perform similar functions across the public sector are rewarded similarly, and it is transparent, right? That, we had a public sector compensation system where some of the expenses would be in salaries, some of them would be in programs, because it was so allowance-based. And that didn't give a true picture to Jamaicans of what the cost of public sector compensation is, which is the single largest cost in government. We want that cost to be transparent to the individual and to the country. And by representing your compensation in 100 different allowances, even on your paycheck, it's confusing even to the employee. And when it comes to pension time, which I know a lot of people, especially younger folks in the public sector, don't necessarily, this is not as big a point to them. But for the older folks, of which there are many, they get this point, this is a point that they get in a dramatic way. When allowances constitute a large portion of your compensation, and those allowances are not pensionable, it means that when you retire on income that bears little resemblance to your total income pre-retirement. What this does is to represent compensation primarily in the form of salary. So the proliferation of allowances, which is a symptom or a feature of the instability that we have been through over a long period of time, and where government and unions have sought ways of transferring benefits and we ended up with this proliferation, but it hasn't served employees across the long term. And we've sought to rationalize a lot of those and represent them in salary. So people, when you retire, your salary bears, your pension bears better relationship to the salary that you earn. And I must say that we're doing this compensation restructuring at a time throughout the region where public sector salaries have not moved. In one country, I don't want to name them right now, public sector, well, I believe in Barbados, public sector employees have not had an increase since 2018. In Belize, there was a 10% retraction or reduction in public sector salaries during the COVID year, right? And in other places, you have had prime ministers come out and say, boy, with what has been happening, we've had it difficult to pay public sector salaries. And in Jamaica, because we've been experiencing this economic recovery, which is due in part to how we conducted ourselves, and I have to give a lot of credit to the unions who, you remember that 4% wage deal we had to do it during COVID, right? Because we lost $75 billion of revenue. We came to unions and said, look, we cannot implement the restructuring this year. That was 2021. And it took us 11 months to get agreements with everyone, but everyone eventually came on board, and I give a lot of credit to public sector unions, public sector leaders for that. Without that, we would not be here today. But so I'm saying, in the midst of what we're seeing across the region, where public sector salaries have stood still, or in some countries been reversed, in Jamaica, we are implementing the most ambitious reform to public sector compensation right out of the pandemic. And that tells you something good amidst all our challenges is happening in Jamaica.
It speaks to something that you've been saying for a while, Minister, about public sector modernization, and I see it in how the package. Some unions have come on board. What will happen to the others who are still not yet signed?
Yeah, so we have unions representing 60,000 public sector workers, over 15 unions who have come on board. We can't talk to everybody at the same time, at the same pace. Okay. So the fact that others aren't there doesn't mean that people are saying, hey, I don't want to come on. It just means that we have spent a lot more time with those who have come on board. And now that we have reached agreement, we can shift our focus to the others. So we are in advanced discussions with other groups that continue, with the police, with the teachers. And junior medical doctors, and some other groups as well. And those talks are encouraging, and it is my hope that we'll reach agreement before too long.
How long will the agreement take to come into play?
Well, this is effective April 1st, 2022. Yes.
No,
2022. Yes. So there's a retroactive component of it.
All right.
And therefore, those who signed up to the end of last week, we're working assiduously. It means a lot of steps, right? Because this is not just a salary increase. Right. This is an abandonment of an old system and the implementation of a new system where everybody is going to be better off. So making sure that working hard to put people in a position that the back portion of it they can get very, very, very soon. Will take a lot of effort, but the Ministry of Finance is working assiduously towards that. Towards possibly a payment in December.
Wow, right on time.
Which would be great. It's going to be great for a lot of. It's going to be good for a lot of people. Yeah. Those in the category of persons whose union signed last week. We're working to make it a good Christmas. Let's put it that way.
Now, Minister, there was some level of apprehension, hesitance, because it's a new system.
Yes.
But everything sounds so rosy. Is there a catch?
Yeah. No. Look, this has been a process, and this has been a process that we've been working on for a long time. Right. And there has been, we have had ups and downs, and there have been times where people have misunderstood the intent. There have been times when we have had to make adjustments. We have listened and responded and changed. So it's been a genuine democratic dialogue on process. There's been a lot of information in the public domain. Unions have met with the groups, the employees they represent, and put out analysis and papers and so on. It's been a real sort of healthy process of ventilating concerns and so forth. And at the end of it, what we have today is a revamped and restructured compensation system that gives us a better chance of retaining and attracting and retaining the talent that we need to run a modern bureaucracy. We have, in the Ministry of Finance, for example, in a very key unit, I have 7 jobs in my economics unit. Think about that. That's one a critical unit.
Right.
And only 2 are filled. Right? And for the last 18 months, we have not been able to fill the others because we have not been able to attract at the levels
That's
that have
required.
been offered. With this compensation restructuring, we've had a chance. It's not a traditional increase. What happens is that everybody moves lockstep. So you keep the same system and you just increase everybody by the same percentage. This time, what we've been able to do is to look at where we have inconsistencies, inequities, where things are out of sync, and adjusted them, even if it means that in some cases adjustments were fairly large, to put us in a position that we can jump the modern bureaucracy can attract the talent that it needs to run.
Productivity is everything. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you for
being
having
with
me.
us this
Thank
morning.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward to hearing more about it.
Yes.
And the happy faces, hopefully this Christmas. The Honourable Minister.